our population is about 200 million. And
this is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, good morning and welcome to Early Exchange, where we talk about each. Daily. As you know, that Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're going to have another conversation, and our conversation will be in respect to affordable housing in Nigeria. Why has it been so challenging to have affordable housing in Nigeria? These are things we're going to look at today. We're going to do news review and all the things that are trending across the whole world. Don't forget you can be part of this discussion by going to our social media platform, our Facebook page, our Twitter page, and also our YouTube page at Souq News to share your view, to like, and also be part of this program using the hashtag Early Exchange. We hope that you spend the next 3 hours with us, whatever you have with you, your breakfast, your cup of tea. If your preference, is coffee, you can have that. We'll spend the next 3 hours with us. We are set to give you the best of programming to make your day remarkable, to make your day unforgettable. It's Early Exchange, and we're going to kick off after this break. Stay with us.
Three wise men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of 3 men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the 3 sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the 3 Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. 3 white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The three wise men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodun Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the eco-greeting tradition. The three wise men, Arometa, Souq Enlightenment.
On social media, many Nigerian young companies were celebrating, wow, we raised Series C, we raised Series D. And anytime they raised these monies, everybody hailed them. But what was behind it? What is behind every raise is that the entrepreneur founder is diluted significantly. We had a very interesting session, and in one of the sessions, there was a role play about the case study on CWG PLC, which is a company that I founded. And the case was written by Columbia Business School to discuss a point about venturing, about entrepreneurship, and about funding for the enterprise. And the case ended on the question, should Austin Okere take the venture capital investment or should he reject it? Just a little bit of background. So this is a company, CWG, in 2005 that was doing very well. It was riding on the back of the Y2K that just happened at the turn of the century, was riding on the back of the telecom boom that happened immediately after the civilian government of OBJ and GSM was launched, was riding on the back of the bank consolidation in 2005 that was done by Governor Soludo. And in each of these booms, CWG had positioned and taken good advantage. So this is not a company that was in dire need of cash or was desperate in 2005. But we had a plan to list our shares on the stock market, and we thought that the best way to do it was to first do either a private placement or better still to do a venture capital fundraise so that they will bring discipline into our operations, governance, strengthen our governance, and of course, bring more technical knowledge. And if people saw that this company was invested in you, probably it will make the listing on the stock exchange more attractive. The issue here is at what price? And I remember that I've discussed something similar on this on social media where many Nigerian young companies were celebrating, wow, we raised Series C, we raised Series D. And anytime they raised these monies, everybody hailed them. But what was behind it? What is behind every raise is that the entrepreneur founder is diluted significantly. So if I use CWG as a case study, the case that was written by Columbia was that there was an offer of $8 million for 25% of the company, putting the valuation post at $32 million. Make no mistake, the Treasury bill's interest rate is 15% sometimes.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, glad to have you join us on our big discussion for today, and our focus is going to be on affordable housing in Nigeria. Looking at the word affordable, how many Nigerians can afford, to pay or get a house now, looking at the present economic reality, looking at the purchasing power, the exchange rates, the inflationary rate in Nigeria. This is why this conversation is critical. We're going to have an expert in the house soon who's going to talk about it, what we need to do as a nation. The critical issue comes when it comes to the issue of financing. A lot of Nigerians pay out of their pocket to get, housing and to pay for houses. But the ideal thing should be mortgage financing. Why has it not been working? These are things we're going to look at. What state is it now? What's the federal government doing in this light? What kind of policy should the federal government come with to ensure that Nigerians have access to affordable housing, not just on the federal level, even at the state level, and then the local government level? Now let's take this special report. When we have the special report, we'll return to start our discussion with our special guest. Stay with us.
According to Abraham Maslow, man's basic needs include need for esteem, safety, self-actualization, and physiological needs. Man wouldn't be able to fully achieve the other needs if his physiological needs like shelter is not met. As such, Nigeria, with a growing population of over 200 million people, has an estimated 28 million housing deficit as of 2023, indicating that it needs at least 28 million housing units to adequately provide shelter for its population. The problem of shortage of affordable and decent housing in Nigeria is significantly pronounced in urban areas where rapid urbanization and population growth have surpassed the construction of new housing units. To many in the know, addressing housing deficit in Nigeria is a rather complex challenge arising from factors such as limited access to mortgage financing, high construction costs, inadequate infrastructure developments, policy reforms, and an increasing urban population. The shortages of affordable and decent housing had led to rising crime rates, increased poverty, sluggish economic growth, amongst others. These problems could be a thing of the past in Nigeria if the private sector is encouraged in housing production with help of incentives, loans, subsidies, and building land readily made available and accessible to potential builders. Also, sustainable housing which focuses on creating environmentally friendly, energy efficient, and socially responsible living spaces could help promote design that accommodate the needs of residents while minimizing environmental impact. The new government might want to revisit past reforms, seek policies that could be adaptable to Nigeria, and work with private sectors to see how the problem of shortage of affordable and decent housing becomes a thing of the past. Juvi Ufiene, Souq News.
All right, that report has set the pace for our discussion today, looking at affordable housing, and that report was put together by our producer, Juvi, and I must commend him for doing a good job there. So we want to look at that, and the statistics is showing that about 75% of Nigerians don't have access to affordable housing, because the word affordability is very crucial here. Let me take this to Blessing. Looking at the economic reality in Nigeria, an average Nigerian, when it comes to affordable, housing, this is elusive to them, especially to the low or the middle class. Even the rich, there's this idea that even the rich also cry.
Yes.
When it comes to this kind of reality too, the rich know that even if you're not crying, you're paying more, to get your housing done, to get the services of someone who's going to, in the other climb, where you have access to mortgage financing. There's an arrangement where you even make some payments instrumentally to get your housing, for you. But this time around, of course it's available here, but not at the scale at which one is expected to have gone. You're looking at the population of Nigeria, about 200 million. The present housing scheme is overstretched. In fact, the population is more than the available houses or the housing scheme in Nigeria. And that's why you see every slum, in every time you see slums springing up, because people have to make provision for themselves. If they can't afford to get a standard house, some people will have to stay in shanties, in makeshifts, in slums where they feel their finances will give them the affordability, and this has thrown up a lot of challenges over the years.
Yes, housing is a major problem in a country like Nigeria, and the housing deficit is quite large because it's not easily affordable. A lot of persons come into ownership of houses today by their own effort, being able to purchase a land and then take care of the building cost. But how many persons can do that with what they earn? So it's a challenge. Now, one would expect that maybe the government comes in at several levels providing affordable housing, but there's not much the government can also do in that regard. And sometimes when those provisions are made, they're tailored to cater for those under government employ, maybe civil servants, and so maybe through some form of contributory scheme or a mortgage kind of scheme, they can own houses and then begin to pay in installments. But we do have the Federal Mortgage Bank that should be open to people. But the thing is, a lot of Nigerians do not even know about the existence of Federal Mortgage Bank, and they do not know the requirements. What qualifies you to be given, to come under that scheme or to be a beneficiary of it. So these are some of the things that need to be exposed to Nigerians so that they can take advantage of it. And then the housing issue vary from one city to the other. In a place like Lagos, it's a major challenge because it's very much populated, and you know that land is not so easy to come by in Lagos. So these are some of the peculiarities that Lagos deals with when it comes to housing. But let's take the matter to the table of Otumba Gbemi Oyinyeyin, who's the MD, CEO, Realtors Billionaire Group, RBG. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me on the program again today.
Nice to have you. So let's look at the issue of affordable housing. Now, I just talked about it varying from one city to the other, using Lagos as an example. But what's your take on the huge housing deficit that we currently have in Nigeria?
Well, the major challenge, which we're all aware of, is the fact that we have, certain limitations that it's not peculiar to Nigeria alone, just basically any developing country. One, rapid population growth. And just like you mentioned, Lagos, everybody's trooping to Lagos to make ends meet, since there's no other state in the country that is that has the same level of opportunity and economic empowerment like Lagos. So every day, thousands of people troop into Lagos. How will government be able to plan for that? So definitely that leads to inadequate infrastructure. And of course, you'll be talking about land acquisition and ownership problem, because don't forget that traditionally land is owned by some families or the indigenes, and for you to acquire, there are issues, challenges. So, and again, our economy has not been doing too well. In the last 80 years, also in the last few years, also dollar keeps rising against our naira. So it's just and that also impacts on the cost of housing, cost of land, even to ordinary people to be able to get just a room to rent in Lagos now, it's almost out of the reach of the ordinary citizen because of the high cost of rent, high cost of housing and all that, and also there is no system, like you mentioned earlier, that the Federal Mortgage Bank should have been the stopgap for particularly at least those who have regular income and all that to be able to access, through the National Housing Fund. But all that again, information is key, and that is why we need to, because at least a few years ago, the government has made it possible for people to access, at least those who contributed into the National Housing Fund, NHF, at least to access 25% of their contribution to be able to buy land. But then that also has some challenge because you can only access that if you are buying a property. They don't give you money to go and buy land. They give you money to buy a property. And that property must be in a location that already has a title document. And then when you look at the average Nigerian, what can they afford? Can they afford to buy a property in Lekki or, areas that are fully developed with title? So that poses another challenge. And then, those are some of those, all those, and then even when you get the opportunity to get the inequality, corruption, bureaucracy, so a lot of things have bedeviled the average Nigerian in terms of housing.
Right. Let's look at the issue of mortgage financing. Ideally, like we've said, this should take care of issues like this. But what are the critical challenges, confronting mortgage financing in Nigeria? What are the bottlenecks? And then how can it be simplified for Nigerians to have access to affordable housing?
Well, that is where government comes in. I mean, anything bureaucracy has to do with government. So if we're talking about, making that process easier, it still lies with government. And number one that I will mention is information. Most people don't still believe that this is happening. Even those who are qualified, even those who have been, contributing into the NHS for 10 years, for 15 years, because I have a personal experience that my wife also, in fact, the bank had been, informing her for the past 3 years that take advantage of these, said, where is it possible? What about the process? It's just like you mentioned, bureaucracy, that who wants to go through that before you know it, they tell you you'll have to go to Abuja, you have to go and see somebody before they approve your stuff. The process can take 1 year and all that. So information, it's necessary, it is important for government to come out, to educate, to orientate, citizens. Number one, that if you have contributed to the NHF just for 6 months, after 6 months, you are eligible to apply. That sounds unbelievable, and it's like, how is that possible? How many people would it? But it is possible, and it is happening. So number one, and maybe that is where the media also comes up with this kind of educative, programs for more people to be able to call in and then hear and know that it is possible. At least I'm not a government official, so if I'm saying something is possible, it's something that we have just done. We just got a property, through the NHF, just a few months ago. Yes, the process took about, about 3-4 months thereabout, but it's done. It's possible that people can begin to contribute into the National Housing Fund through the Federal Mortgage Bank. Cooperatives can begin to do that now. Corporate organizations, businesses, your own company, your media house can also do that, register, and then let staff begin to at least contribute into that fund. And that gives them at least that access to be able to do that. So, but on the part of the government now is to make the process more accessible and easier, that people don't need to begin to travel down, because when I was in their office, we're also trying to register our own staff, under the NHF stuff, which we started just a few weeks ago. So people still have to come down to their office. So again, they need to make sure that this process can be done, remotely. You don't need to physically come to the office to submit form or to get the information you need. I mean, so these are just the areas that I believe the government can come in and let people know and make it easy. Thank you.
All right, you just talked about the need for information, but as critical as housing, and there is a National Housing Fund, why has the information not disseminated, not to every Nigerian? Why is it not out there? Why does it seem like something of privilege? You only come by it maybe by the nature of what you do, or if you are in an organization that is part of such scheme. And for those in the informal sector, how can they be incorporated into such?
It still boils down to information, still boils down to government orientation. Like I said, registered corporate organizations, registered cooperatives can always, they have the right and the structure to apply for this. So even the market women, the traders, because they are well organized, they have cooperatives that are well registered, they can approach, the Federal Mortgage Bank. Or they can come through realtors like us, to bring them into the system. So it is possible, but, information is lacking. So I will say your media house is doing a good thing in this regard. Let the news begin to go out. Let the awareness be created so that at least more and more people will know it is possible. It was not possible 3-4 years ago, but this thing has been signed into law, and that is why it started gradually, and it's going to increase because more and more people are getting aware of it, and then they are taking advantage of it.
All right, let's look at how much of pressure is coming from rural-urban migration, how much it has affected, provision of housing and then access to housing in Nigeria. This issue of rural-urban migration, how much of pressure or influence has it had on the issue of providing affordable housing in Nigeria?
Okay, how can a government truly plan for a city like Lagos, where thousands troop in unchecked every day? How do you budget for that? How can you cope with that? So it's actually going to be a holistic, approach to it. For example, if the Dangote refinery were to be in Olokola, where originally it was meant to be sited, millions of people will troop to that area. the pressure is not going to come to Lagos. If other refineries in the country begin to work, the one in Kaduna, the one in Port Harcourt, the one in Warri, I mean, thousands and thousands of people will also move from Lagos and other states to those locations. So there must be a national, approach to this. But as long as it is only a state like Lagos that people can buy and sell and do business, and people can run down for employment, because in Lagos, like they say, except you are lazy, it's only the lazy that will go hungry in Lagos. Because even if it's for you to go and stand at the junction, or and just be diverting or traffic, people will start giving you money. Whether it's pure water you want to sell, you make money. Whether it's to sweep the streets, you make money. So in Lagos, you find that people create jobs for themselves. But until other aspects of the country, other industries, other states start developing economic activities, that is the only way Lagos could be eased out. If not, the problem is going to continue and government cannot solve it. Private developers cannot also solve it because they don't have all the funding to be able to, continue. And don't forget also that even the land mass, the land space in Lagos is limited. Like everybody knows, I mean, we don't. There's virtually no more land in Lagos, and that is why land reclamation has been on the increase, because people still want to stay within, Lekki, within the urban centers, and so they keep just, reclaiming land just to create artificial land, and that is also affecting, the ocean encroachment and all that. That is also increasing. So we need a holistic approach to the matter.
Some initiative towards providing affordable housing for Nigerians. You have schemes that allow people who want to own lands to pay in installments. How's that working? And how does this affect the private investors? When you give people the chance to pay for land, and some pay in some states, in some locations, as low as 1,000 naira daily payment. For you who has acquired the land, how long will it take for you to recoup your investment? So how's it working out?
Well, when you look at it, some of these things sometimes can be very fraudulent. That's the truth of the matter. Just like you said, if you're asking somebody to pay 1,000 naira every day and all that, so how long is it going to take? So that you find that at the end of the day, even when the person has now paid, how many years is now going to take? We have instances that some real estate companies, even 3 years after people have completed, payment, subscribers cannot get land to be allocated to them. And I mean, it was a major issue, even last year, that some people have to go to a real estate company, and then to make noise became legal issues. I mean, how can you pay for land finally? But the truth of the matter is that when you ask, 500 people to be paying for the same land, at the end of the day, they will sell and market and market and market, and then they will sell more than the land available. So when those people now finally, because some people will pay outright, some people will say they're going to pay 6 months. So, but where it is done, properly, and then it is being reasonable. I mean, people can have structured payment, instrumental payment for 12 months, for 18 months. Those are still manageable. You're saying, oh, within 2 years, at least you can complete your payment. And also, when that is done, the person who is paying outright is buying the land at a cheaper rate than you who want to spread your payment. So also the investor has already imputed the cost of appreciation on the land for that period of time. For example, if you're paying after 6 months, there could be a 10% markup. If you're paying after 12 months, there could be a 15% markup on the initial outright price, and just like that. So that is at least reasonable and genuine. You can't say that the person who is paying outright is going to pay the same amount, as the person who is going to complete payment in 18 months. No, except, that's just fraudulent. But it is helping because, for example, in our own company, I mean, so many people have taken advantage of that, and the, instrumental payment over, 12 months, 18 months, and then they've been allocated, because what we do is to say, we give you allocation after 50%. Once you've done 50% of payment, you are going to be given at least paper allocation, so that you know the exact plot and size of what you are paying for. So it's not until when that is completed, or that you're going to be given allocation. So if it is genuine, it is good, and it has helped.
All right, let's look at the issue of rent. For some Nigerians who can afford to pay out of their pocket or make arrangements to, get their own house or housing scheme, they opt for rent. And you have a situation in some states where they have to pay for 2 years and more. I remember in Lagos State, the issue of Lagos Tenancy Bill, which came up with the idea of paying rent for 1 year. But you discover that people's landlords or homeowners, they ask for 2 years, or property owners ask for more years. How does this affect, affordability when it comes to housing, and then the impact of that on housing development in Nigeria?
Well, if you listen to the president, Tinubu, recently in his speech, when he was talking about corruption, and then possibility of credit facility for citizens, and that is going to be one of the cardinal things that his administration is going to put in place. And how do you expect ordinary civil servants to be able to afford 5 million naira, outright, to put down to get a property, or even to pay 1.2 million for a rent for a 2-bedroom apartment? How? That these are some of the things that push people into all kinds of corrupt tendencies and activities, even in the corporate sector. Because if you can afford rent, like as of today in Lagos, you want to get just a room self in Lagos now, in some locations, I mean, you'll be talking about minimum of 450,000 a room self. So how will a fresh graduate or just an office assistant be able to afford that? Where are they going to be able to get that? They cannot approach the bank for loan. They can't access anything. The landlord also is asking for, at least the only good thing is that for house rent, the issue of 2 years and all that at least have subsided, because the reality is clear that 80%, 90% of the citizens cannot afford even the 1 year you are talking about. I mean, in the last 2 years, landlords have realized, because of the since the COVID era, it's not easy. So that is no longer, selling. If you are moving to an apartment for, yes, they collect, 1 year. But maybe if it's for shop, for commercial shops and all that, they still request for like 2 years or 1.5 years because of the high demand for them. So that one is just a case of, demand and supply. But whether we like it or not, the cost of rent is pretty high, and that is hindering. And also, you will also realize, like human beings, we will always find alternatives. That is why people, the concept of shared apartment, shared room, is now very, very common in Lagos. Because when people cannot afford to even renew their rent, so they have to bring in, somebody in that are going to share the rent with. So in Lagos now, I know of apartments where 3, 4 people are staying together, and then they are sharing, the bill, because it's not easy for somebody to to raise the 1.2 million or 1 million. So 4 of them might come together. If it's a 3-bedroom apartment, okay, each of you take one room, even the sitting room, they can divide it and rent that one out, so that at least at the end of the day, everybody's just paying maybe like 400, and then to be able to survive. So that is what is happening. The reality is staring us in the face, and then people are adjusting to it.
Okay, let me ask you something related to what you just talked about. Apart from the demand for 2 years down payment, there's also something that have been introduced into rent. It started as a legal agreement and you paying agency fee. So now there used to be a percentage for this, but now you find that, for example, if you want to rent a room, maybe the rent is 300,000, for instance, and then they tell you that the legal agreement fee, agency fee, and I think there's caution fee as well, is almost more than 300,000 or equal to that. So you add it together, it becomes like 600,000. So where did these practices come from? What are how necessary are these fees, and how come it has become a practice where the fees you pay becomes more expensive or as expensive as the rent? The implications of this on people's ability to afford housing, not just in Lagos, but nationwide.
Well, that is an offshoot of capitalism. Is an offshoot of, demand and supply. People take advantage of others to enrich themselves, and we are in a capitalist, economy, where the government cannot tell house owners, this is how much you must charge. Government cannot tell agents, you cannot, collect more than this percentage. I mean, if you're getting a property, maybe 1 million and above, you're going to be charged 10% agency, 10% legal, and then service charge and, caution fee. If you are getting an ordinary shop, there's a current case I'm aware of, a small shop that costs 10,000 naira per month, that is 120,000 per annum. The lady is being asked to pay 40,000 naira for agency and 40,000 naira for legal, and another 20,000 naira for caution. That's 100,000 naira for a shop of 120,000 per annum. So it is frustrating, and to be honest with you, I don't know how the government can come in. There was a time in Lagos that the government brought out and that landlords should not charge. It can never work, because the houses are private ownership. So how are you going to tell the landlord this is the amount you should charge for rent? Or you should not charge more than, we should not collect rent more than. So we're exposed to all of these because we're in a capitalist system, and that is what makes life more difficult for people. Now, when you go to more civilized economies, who can even afford to pay 1 year rent in advance over there? How many? What is the percentage of the population in England that can pay 1 year rent in advance? It's not even possible. So the realities of every economy determine what is, going to be possible. Like I just mentioned earlier, 4 or 5 years down the line ago, I mean, landlord will insist 2 years, yes. But when COVID started and, even their existing tenants cannot renew their rent, reality was done on them. So a landlord that you even give 6 months, he will collect sharp and say, okay, so when are you going to pay because of the reality of the times. And that is why for
Otumba
major
Bemi, we
or
will
normal
continue
rent,
this conversation after this quick
the
break. So you will have the opportunity to continue with your line of thought on this. Please stay with us. We'll be back after this break.
Okay, thank you.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Thank you for staying with us. We've been talking with Otumba Bemi, and he's the MD, CEO, Realtors Billionaire Group, RBG, and he's been talking to us about housing finance as we look at affordable housing and housing development in Nigeria. He was on the line of thought responding to the question of some fees that are incorporated into the rent, making the ability for some Nigerians to afford good housing more difficult. So please continue with your thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you very much. So as I was saying, the government can not really do anything in that regard. Um, agents will always, take advantage of that. So what do you do? We'll just manage that. There's nothing we can do. They will charge caution fee that more than 50% of the time, even when you are leaving, you cannot get back. The legal fee, there's no, so it's just like that. Um, it's just like that. And because of the high demand, even when you say you cannot afford it or please they tell you to go. Somebody else will come and pay for it. So that is the dilemma.
Let's take a shift now from housing, financing to the reforms and government initiatives. Over the years, the federal government, including state government, has come up with several initiatives to improve, access to housing in Nigeria. But it hasn't been productive. It hasn't been, given any substance over the years. Talk to us. What has been the challenge when it comes to reforms, and providing good initiative when it comes to housing development in Nigeria?
Well, like I would say again, the government can only do much. Government has tried to do some, but I mean, it's like throwing if it's like providing housing for 500 people where you have 10 million people. How far can that go? That's you're not solving even 10% of the problem. As of today, Nigeria has over 17,000 or 17 million housing unit deficit. So where are we going to start from? So, but some of the initiative that I know the government can put in place. Number one, like this Federal Mortgage Bank, the National Housing Fund scheme, they can expand it so that more people can take advantage of it. Make it a national orientation program, part of the national orientation program. That is one thing that the government can do. They can laud it, they can really go extra mile and then pump money into the Federal Mortgage Bank, or have a sort of arrangement with banks to be able to fund real estate developers. Because banks are not doing that. In fact, banks are competing with real estate developers because they too, they go into the same business. So these are some of the initiatives that the government can take. Because one, if the funding is not there, then there's nothing any developer can do. If access to fund, if access to long-term loans are not there through the banks, what can they do? So for initiative, the government must also look at take a holistic approach to it, so that somebody even in the village, somebody in Kogi, somebody in Kano, somebody in Edo can also have access to housing fund or housing loan. We have done it before in this country. It was possible. So yes, our population is not also helping. And then the migration to city centers is also not putting a lot of pressure and demand, rapid demand, to those city centers. But that is a normal thing in a, cosmopolitan city and, the kind of system we run.
Okay, let's talk about the regulations towards urban planning. So how can regulations on urban planning guide housing development and even ensure efficient land use, also preventing informal settlement? We find in some new areas where developments are ongoing, it's scattered. We've talked about that before at another time when we talked about real estate. But what regulations will ensure efficient use of land and proper urban planning? How would that also affect the way housing is priced?
Well, the first thing is physical planning laws. Recently, if you are aware, you'll find that Lagos state government is going around, demolishing houses that are built on, drainage path, canal path. That is happening. It happened in Ikotai. It happened in VGC. It happened just all in the last, 2 weeks. And the problem is that for developing areas, if people don't know what government or what the town planning structure is, then there's a problem. Because the people that sell land, the Omoniles and all that, don't know anything about town planning. They don't know anything about the government structure or government plan for that area. Government is not communicating to anybody, and people will just buy and then build. And it is after several years or whatever that government will now come and say, hey, where you build is on the path of canal. But at the end of the day, they will still blame the house owners or the developer that, well, you did not come to town planning to come and find out, what is the plan. But sometimes, for example, the development going on in Bejuleki now, there is no clear-cut, layout in that whole axis. Nothing. So people are just building and building and building until several years down the line, government is now going to wake up. Oh, we want to create road here. Oh, there's congestion here. Oh, there's flooding happening here. And so that is not good. And also we must have a national urban development policy. National urban development policy. There must be building codes that should be followed. There must be zoning regulations. There must be a good and realistic land use act. These are things that need to be put in place. Up till tomorrow, people still just develop an estate. I live in an estate where government has not done anything in the estate. No road. We had to construct the road. We are still doing other parts. We had to, do the drainage, put the street light, put the gate, put everything, run the electricity into the estate. I mean, so is it going to be after some years now, government will now come and say, okay, you need to now pay your land use, whatever, for an estate that they've not invested a dime. So there's a whole lot of issues. And then is that when they now want to come later and say, no, the drainage is meant to pass here because there's flooding in some areas. We now need to run a canal. So these are things that, those are the complications we have. And it's a big problem. Big problem.
Now let's look at the activities of land grabbers, popularly known as Omonile. It's what you call a necessary evil. Now, what kind of reforms or initiatives are you expecting from the government to regulate their activities? Because it's been challenging to curb their activities over the years. But what kind of initiative are you expecting from the government to curb, you know, the influence of people called land grabbers, popularly known as Omonile?
Well, in Lagos State, there's a it is now illegal for land grabbers to operate the way they used to operate. You know, because that has been just tamed a bit. You know, than that is in Lagos, because Lagos at least is more, you know, at least a bit more organized than other states. So the government is the only one that can, but because of our culture, now we have a property in, you know, Magboro axis, and then that is under OPIC. Now, even when you go directly to OPIC to buy the land from the Ogun State Property Investment Company, you must still go back to the Baale of that area to pay money. Because even when government has given you your title document to move into the land and, you know, take ownership, the Omoniles will tell you, you have to see us. You cannot, how will you just enter into our father's land, even though government has taken it over? I mean, so you must see them for you to peaceably develop your property. And, you know, these are people without face, because how many do you want to say you want to arrest, or you want to? So there's always the balance. Now, the only good thing that has evolved out of the system is the intervention of real estate companies that has now come in to deal with the Omoniles and then save the populace from directly interfering or interacting with Omonile. And that is the only structure now that has reduced, you know, and put an end to the issue of, oh, I bought land and Omonile took it over. Oh, they asked me to come and pay again. The real estate company actually take that burden and that risk of, you know, their clients. So that, for example, you're buying land from us, you have no issue, no concern with Omonile, because the real estate company, we've already purchased, we've already dealt with them, we've settled all the people we need to settle. They know us, we interact well with them, with their ballers, with everybody, with the families. They are okay, they are happy. So you go in, and then because you are building within an estate perimeter, when you want to build, no Omonile is going to go there to go and disturb you. No Omonile is going to enter into the you know, estate property area. So you are protected. Even when there are issues where, oh, for example, government now comes in and says, oh, they want to use the land for something else, your investment is secure with the real estate company, because you are also not dealing directly with government. You are not at loss. So that is the savings and the comfort we have given to clients, that if you are investing, you're buying directly from us, go to sleep. Your investment is with us. You are not dealing with Omonile. You are not dealing with, so the responsibility is on us. So it's like we're giving the people at least that assurance and confidence that at least whatever you're buying through us is safe.
Okay, so what can be done to ensure adherence to building codes and standards to ensure safety in housing development? Often we hear of cases of building collapse in one part of the country or the other, and lots of housing developments going on nationwide. So how can, I don't know, building codes and their standard, but adherence to the standards, what can be done to enforce it?
Well, why are there no adherence? One is because somebody is settling somebody not to do the right thing. The codes are there, the standards are there. We are building some structures. I mean, there are about, for Lagos State, at least there are about 5 different agencies that will approach you where you are putting up a structure. 5. That's the minimum. The environment, the safety, they will come. So it's not like they don't know or they are not aware of structures that come up or that they don't approach them. But what happens? Settlement. And then they go. Nobody is doing the proper test or the proper checks or ensuring the proper safety is maintained. So all this goes back to the government, that the government should just enforce or ensure that proper building codes are followed by developers. There's no other way to it. There's no other, thing to do. It's not, the developer can decide to do anything, but it is the government that will say, no, this cannot work. I mean, we've had 2 terrible, instances in Ikoyi just in the last 2 years. High-rise buildings. How? Why? So that's all I can say about that.
Let's look at some of the challenges or problems associated with land use planning and development in Nigeria, which is where the basic problems usually come from. We have the Land Use Act. We ought to take care of this. Is there a need for reform, and then how effective has this been when it comes to land use planning and development in Nigeria?
I don't think it's about a new reform. It's just enforcement. It's just enforcement. There's no need for any new land use. What we have is more than enough. What are the basic things you need? It's not like there's any new thing in building technology or building structure. That is nothing. It's just enforcement.
So something you said earlier while we were talking about housing finance, you mentioned that the National Housing Fund, for those who were parts of it, who were making contributions, they can have access to about 25% of it, but they can have access to it when they want to buy a property with title. So is there a need to change some of the laws around this to make it easy for those who are part of the scheme and for others to come? Because you also talked about how housing or properties with title are very expensive, and that may be a discouragement or a disincentive for people to be part of it.
Well, to be honest, yes, for an institution to invest in a land without title is too much risk. There's no business risk analysis that's going to, approve that. So, but the only thing is where government, because also getting land title is also where the bottleneck is. We have properties now that we've been waiting for 3 years just to get the title. Because for every title, for you to get just an excision, for a land to be officially, exceeded to the family, the governor must approve it. How many of the families, have access to be able to approach the governor or for their papers to actually get to the desk of the governor and then to get it approved? So it is in fact, we have to sponsor some families that have hectares of land. The cost of even doing survey, they cannot afford. the cost of processing, the title, they can't afford. So they need, sponsors like us to come in and then help them. And it still takes years. So that is another area of serious bottleneck. Serious bottleneck for families to get a decision, or for an exceeded land to now be gazetted, and then to now move to the point of, oh, maybe shouldn't have seen. So it's a whole long journey. And that would delay, the number of lands that have title. So that is another, story for another day. So that is where we are, and that is why it is not easy for the ordinary people to have access or to be able to buy lands that are titled or that have title. So they rather just start, with a land without title and then hope that someday, somehow. So, I mean, so it's a most of the estates that are developed in Jar down to most of them, they don't have titles yet. And people are built for like 10 to 20 years. Families are yet to be given accession to those lands. So even the property owners cannot process anything, because if the government does not release the land to the family, there is no way you can process anything to get your CO. So that is where we are.
That's great. Otumba Agbemi Oyeni, we need to appreciate you for spending time with us on Daily Exchange this morning. You've shared your thoughts in respect to the reforms, housing financing in Nigeria. Thank you so much for spending time with us on Daily Exchange this morning.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure always.
A pleasure. All right, let's go on a short break now to accommodate another guest who's going to talk about something that's related to housing in Nigeria. You don't need to go away. Just stay with us, because it's getting bigger and getting more interesting. Stay with us.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souq News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it, because this is Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souq News. Here's the Souq News, who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souq News. Thank you very much.
how can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, glad to have you join us once again. It's still Early Exchange, and we've been looking at affordable housing in Nigeria. Earlier, we had Otumba Oyeni, who talked about the reforms and the government initiatives to ensure that housing development is achieved in Nigeria. Like we always say, the conversation is getting bigger and better, and is even getting more interesting and more engaging now because we are expanding the discussion. And to join us in this segment to drive this discussion, we are being joined by Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, who is the co-founder of Orbit Africa Properties. He's here with us in the studio. Wisdom, glad to have you join us.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning, Ma. Thank you.
Now, we're looking at sustainable housing in Nigeria. Over the years, the federal government has come up with several reforms, to ensure that mass housing is available for all. But it hasn't become productive, or, it's something that is enough compared to the number of population that we have. Talk to us. What are some of the critical issues that has propped up over the years in related to sustaining housing development in Nigeria?
Okay, I know you have mentioned one of them, which is the situation of population in Nigeria. We understand that we are over about 200 million as a country, and it is a major challenge that has faced us as a country, Nigeria. And as much as the governments are making efforts, it looks like this effort is not tallying with the population growth, because you see the population in form of people giving birth, population is growing, people migrating into Nigeria. People migrating into Nigeria too. There are a lot of people in other sub-African countries like Nigeria and all that. They feel like a greener pasture, you understand, is when we come into Nigeria. And so this population is a major, the population issue is a major challenge that has faced the country and even the government and all the effort they are making towards sustainable housing. We also have, maybe personally, I'll call it the behaviors of Nigerians, you understand. Now, we understand that when it comes to sustainable housing, there are what we call plans, there are what we call layouts, there are what we call, there are things that Nigerians are supposed to follow, lay down rule. For example, let me give you an example. So if we use Lagos as an example now, we have what we call the master plan for Lagos as a state. Now, over time, you see that we have gone against the master plan when it comes to sustainable housing, when it comes to planning of the state and all this. So I believe that we have the population as a challenge. We also have the behaviors of Nigeria as a challenge. We also have the availability of this material, because when we talk about sustainable housing, we're talking about housing facilities that that has less adverse effects to maybe the climate, to the environment and all that. That's what we're talking about. And there are materials, especially when it comes to development of houses, that needs to be available, you understand. But these materials are really scarce, especially when it comes to Nigeria. Let me give you an example. So everybody is used to the construction of houses with blocks. That's what is very popular in Nigeria. But if you go outside Nigeria, go to the UK, go to other parts of the world, you see them going into using sustainable products in construction of houses. Like you see them using bamboo, you see them utilizing cellulose, you see them using bricks, even bricks. I know bricks is kind of available in Nigeria to an extent, but not really cost effective as a normal block everybody. So I believe that the availability of materials for the construction of houses is one of the challenges too that has faced us as a country in achieving sustainable housing, even from the government. Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the trend. From what you just talked about, you mentioned the use of bamboo sticks. Before this time, people were using that in building houses in Nigeria, but once modernization set in, people began to go for blocks. So it seemed like it's the old pattern coming back now. And Nigerians have already developed a taste for such houses built with blocks. How can that be changed? Because it seems to be a preference. If you're to build a house with bamboo, are there creative ways to make this look like what you have with modern houses?
Okay, yes. I know that you have, I know that in some advanced, let's call it offices or locations, you see that the products you see from some of these bamboos and all that, they are very beautiful. And the way you see it's been packaged now, it's not the way we have always known it. When in those days, when you see people live in bamboo house, you feel that they are maybe people in the rural areas and all that. But these days, you even find in urban communities, you find construction of houses with some of these materials you're talking about. And then you see them come out very, very beautiful. You understand? So I feel that we have now gone into that stage that this bamboo, this wood, has been, will I say processed? Yes, will I say processed? They have been processed in a kind of way that when you use them in the construction of house, in short, even from the outside, if somebody does not even tell you that this house was constructed with a bamboo or with timber, you may not even know. I also feel that there should be a sensitization on people on the benefit of using some of these other materials in the construction of housing when we talk about sustainable housing development. People should be aware of the benefits. Let me give you an example. When you construct houses with some of this bamboo, some of this timber we talk about, you cut down on a lot of hazards. We understand that bamboo or trees help absorb carbon. So anybody who is staying in the house would have more purified air than an individual who is staying in a house that is built with bricks and built with blocks. Yes, so there should be a sensitization to the common man, to the community. There should be campaign, especially to preach that we understand that, yes, concrete is what everybody is used to, but there is a way we can return to the old pattern. There's a way we can return to the way things have been before that will even help us, number one, in improving our health as individuals who stay in those houses, and number two, in cutting on living costs, cutting on the cost to use. I was studying something about India. They have this campaign on sustainable housing, you understand, in a part of India, and they said that compared to other parts who still use brick and all that, they have cut on 30% of the normal life expensive they're supposed to use to live when it comes to electricity, when it comes to going to the hospital and all that. They have been, so if we sensitize Nigerians, because we're in Nigeria, so if we sensitize Nigeria on the benefit of sustainable housing, the benefits it can add to the community, the benefits it can add to the health of people, and then these things, like I said in the first time, can be made available. When I mean made available, also like subsidized. For example, if we have the government carrying it personally to say, okay, all real estate developers, maybe there is a mandate that, okay, out of all the estates you construct, you must have a place that is dedicated that, okay, you must use this material for the development of this house and all that. And then if we are importing this material, it will be subsidized and made available to you and all that. I think that it will also go a long way to encourage developers and also Nigerians to go the way of the sustainable housing part. Yeah.
Talking about subsidy, does that imply that the materials are expensive? And let's also look at the durability. People are building to last them, to last their entire lifetime, so they can even pass on the houses as inheritance to their children. How durable are these materials?
Okay, yes, you first of all talked about price. You talked about price. Now the truth is that when you talk about sustainable housing, majority of the materials are not produced in Nigeria. Unlike blocks, blocks, everybody can just make block with cement, you have that. But when you talk about sustainable housing, I'm talking about construction of houses that has to do with wood, because it's not just this normal bamboo we see on the street or normal bamboo they use when they want to cast the house. No, you understand, these bamboos have to go through process. they also have to be treated, because you're talking about durability. Now, we understand the fact that people are used to termites. When termites comes on, when you talk about wood, before you know termites, but they are treating, there are processes that these woods will go through that we help them to last a long time, help them to last a long while. And also, you talk about people wants to build for their lifetime. They want to make sure that whatever I'm building now will last me, to my children, and all that. That is also possible, because when you talk about sustainable housing, so let me give you an example. So somebody built a house in Lekki now, and then maybe he has a job in VI, and then you lose your job, and maybe you want to relocate to Abuja. You understand? When you talk about sustainable housing, it is, you can move your house. Let me use that word, mobile house. You understand?
How do you move?
Okay. So in the construction of this house, unlike the bricks and all that, where you have to use cement and it looks like whatever you are building is a permanent structure, on this other one, they are detachable. We have one of that house in Aja. In short, I watched a documentary on YouTube on how they constructed that house in about 10 days. 10 days was used in the construction of the framework. And it is because it has to do with, so they have a way that it is being prepared. And then when you just come to the location of the house, you just have to join, screw here to this, screw here to this, screw here to this. And before you know, a house is standing. And if there's a situation where you have to maybe move that, all you just have to do is to unscrew what you have screwed. Like I said, these materials are not made in Nigeria, and that is the reason for the cost. And then when you talk about durability, they are being also processed, and they can last a long time. Yeah.
Now let's look at the role of urban planning and data, because we're talking about sustainable housing. What role will this play in ensuring you have sustainable housing scheme in Nigeria when it comes to urban planning and availability of data? The role urban planning and data will play when it comes to sustainable housing in Nigeria.
We understand that there's a popular saying that anybody who does not plan, you understand, will fail, and it's normal. So when you talk about urban planning is giving layout, giving plan to the settlement of people in a particular community, in a particular region. So data will give you an idea of, so in Lagos, so we have 500 people in Lagos. If the government says that, okay, they want to make house available to the occupants or residents in Lagos, let me use a smaller community, let me use Ikeja, you understand? If they say they want to make that, now urban planning is okay, let's go to the drawing board. We understand that if people must stay in a place, there must be basic amenities for these people. So urban planning will help you to understand that, okay, we are going to have 500 people in this location. Aside from having 500 people in this location, that means that we're going to need 40 schools. We're going to need 50 boreholes. We're going to need this road, you understand, to help manage the population in that location. So data will help give an idea of, okay, these are the total number of people that will be in this place. These are the total number of facilities that are required to help the good living of people that will be in this place. And then when we talk about urban planning will help give equal distribution of the resources that will help the healthy living of these individuals in this particular location. So the truth is that even generally, there's no place in the world, and that's the reason why we have shanties and we have slums. There's no place in the world that people are resident in that there will be no need for urban planning. Urban planning, in short, is what should go ahead of the residential availability of people in a particular place. And when you find a place where there is no plan, there is no layout, people just come and erect structures the way they like and all that. That's the reason why you have slums and then you have shanties in Nigeria. So urban planning is important, but aside from urban planning, we also know that data, information, total population of people are also important. That's the reason why, permit me to say, Lagos is the way it is. The amenities of Lagos that was being planned in the construction and master plan of Lagos, we have gone far above that data or that statistics, even generally in Nigeria. And that's the reason for traffic, that's the reason for traffic congestion, that's the reason for too much pressure on the little facilities that are available. You see them talking about
they want to do a maintenance on the Third Mainland Bridge. Why? It is because the pressure on the bridge, 247 pressure is on that bridge and all that. And let me just also say this, that also government should also take a knowledge from that. I'm not very sure that our population will continue to go back. It will continue to go up. Let me give you an example. The government, the Lagos State government, are currently constructing an 8-lane from Aja to Ekpe. And in Ekpe is where you have the Dangote refinery. Ekpe is where you have the proposed international airport. You have the Lagos Film City in Ekpe, and then a lot of these facilities in that location. I can tell you for sure that the road that is being constructed in the next 6 years will not service the population of people that will be in that area. That is the truth. That road will become overpressured, because we're talking about the location where you have a refinery, you have an airport, you have the settlement of people and all that. You know that there will be in and out movement of people towards that location. Yes, the government have tried to construct an 8-lane, but you are very sure that in the next 10 years, in the next 5 years, that facility may not be able to satisfy the population of people that will go towards that environment. But in general, urban planning is important, and then data is important in the planning of the settlement of people in a particular location. Thank you.
Okay, so still talking about sustainable housing, how does it help with water conservation and waste management?
Okay, well, I know that it's just that in Nigeria, all of us were used to the whole pits, blocks and all that. But in an advanced country, I can tell you that waste management, and let me talk about waste, common waste, sewage, that you find in almost every home, have been converted to reusable materials. They have been converted to reusable materials. I know that one or two estates in Nigeria currently are trying to practice it, that I've seen personally, whereby the waste that is being produced in the estate is also being used to generate electricity, and also being used and also being purified to provide water for that same estate. Yes. So when we talk about, and this is all under sustainable housing, sustainable house. So how do we, number one, utilize anything that will come from housing, that will come from a place of residence of people, anything that will come that will cause an adverse effect to the community? How do we now convert that thing to become of to become of a benefit to the individuals who stay in that place? So you have a lot that has to do with the sewage system I've talked about, which has to do with the preservation or the purification of whatever comes out of people so that they can use it again. We also have, when we talk about sustainable housing, sorry, I'm just dwelling on the timber. When we talk about sustainable housing, it goes beyond that. I mentioned cellulose, I mentioned bricks. These are other forms of housing, these are other forms of materials that can be used in the provision of sustainable housing. When you talk about people staying in a house and all that, you understand? But when we talk about this timber that I'm talking about, I said something about the air that people consume who stay in housing. Now we understand that trees absorbs carbon dioxide. So a house that is constructed with timber, for example, is going to have less carbon dioxide than a house that is being constructed with brick. When you talk about bricks, that's being constructed with block. When you talk about bricks, if a fire incident happen in a house that is being constructed with bricks, right, they are assured of safety than a house that is being constructed with concrete. You understand? So these are some of the benefits that sustainable housing will contribute to individuals, to the community, and entirely to the climate. Yeah.
All right, let's take a breather now, and when we return, we'll have conversation in respect to upgrading of shanties and slums in Nigeria. Wisdom Oluwaseun is still here with us. You just stay with us.
Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodu Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the Eko-greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, Souq Enlightenment.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Many thanks for being there. We're still talking with Wisdom Oluwaseun, who is a co-founder of Orbit Africa Properties. We just talked about sustainable housing. Now let's look at slums and shanties upgrading. Now, when you look at some of the housing in slum areas and shanties, you sometimes wonder how those there are able to cope with the living condition. But what would be needed to improve such infrastructure, considering the fact that those there are low-income earners and may not be able to afford very quality infrastructure? But what can be done to improve the condition of such places?
Okay, yes. Before I go into talking about what can be done to improve the condition living of individuals in these places, I would like to start from a point of, now, we must understand that slums and shanties are, first of all, informal settlements. I don't want to call it illegal, I want to call it informal. But the truth is that majority of the slums and shanties that we have in Nigeria are illegal. When I mean illegal, I mean that they have been scattered many times and then you still find people go back there after a period of time that government does not do something to them. Now we understand that basic amenities, when I talk about basic amenities, I'm talking about road, I'm talking about schools, I'm talking about proper water, I'm talking about power supply. Majority of basic amenities are provided by the government. Now the government many times cannot provide basic amenities in an informal or illegal settlement. I want you to just follow the conversation. Now let me use Makoko as an example. Now, if you trace the history of Makoko, you know that it came from people who came from Benin Republic, or they call them Egun, that wanted to settle in Nigeria, and then they wanted to thrive in Nigeria, and they just found a place and they just went to stay in that place. There was no legal permission and all that. They just went to settle in the place, and because they are staying in the place and they are human beings, and government will not just come and then begin to say, you understand, and even sometimes when they pursue them, they still come back there. But number one is that people must really understand that if you must really enjoy basic amenities, you must do things correctly, you must do things legally, you must do things properly. You know, recently the Commissioner of Lagos State demolished some houses, I don't know if you heard about it, along the Ikota Canal. Although those houses may be said to have been constructed properly, but the location where they have constructed those houses, you can call it an illegal settlement. In short, personally, I would call it a slum or a shanty, because that is what slums and shanties are all about. But now we said that we know that in Nigeria, because of the population, we cannot totally take slums and shanties away. That's what I'm talking about, illegal settlement, away from our country or our community and all that. So what the government can actually do is to see how they can provide basic amenities, at least just to help the living of people in that location. Basic amenities like a proper sewage disposal system. So we know that a slum and a shanty, people just wake up and then drop things anyhow and all that. What the government should do, put strategies on ground to see how, okay, at least if we have trucks that we go to this location to help take the waste of people every morning, and even if you ask them to pay a token and all that, we know that these are, you may call them low income earners, people who are the lower cadre of the society and all that, but I think that that's where the government should come to their aid. Another thing is that we see how we can partner with international bodies. Look at the United Nations, they have a department, they have projects that help people who stay in slums and stay in shanties. In short, the information I have is that from the last support that was given to Nigeria, we're giving about $200 million to upgrade individuals who are in slums and who are in shanty. So if there are proper utilization of this fund, you understand, you can help convert Lekki, the place they call Oniru today, at a time many years back was like a slum and like a shanty. And then when people came into that environment, because of the presence of people, they started developing the place, and then government saw the need to put attention in the place and construct road, see how they can take power supply to that place and all that. You understand? So in general, they should look for a way of taking natural basic amenities to individuals who are in this place, just to help the upgrade of people in this location.
I would like you to educate us on, you know, the various strategies or sources of financing when it comes to upgrading of slums, you know, because you require funds to do this for individuals, organizations, or government agencies that want to do this. Talk to us some of the financing options or strategies.
Okay, yeah, now before I talk about that general financial options, I would like to say that the truth is that many times if we all wait on the government, we wait on public funds to come and help give us basic amenities, we may wait many years before those amenities come. So first of all is communal effort. So we are 50 staying on a particular street. We know that when rain falls, erosion is everywhere, or there's flooding in that location. There's nothing that stops everybody from coming together and saying, see, let's come together and see how we can construct a drainage. If it means that each house should provide 20,000, let's bring that money together and see how we can provide drainage, because it is all for the benefit of each and every one of us. Some of this money that are coming from US, coming from the government and all that will not come. So aside from that, we also have the federal government. The federal government have budget, have allocations through the Ministry of Housing, that funds are being made available. Allocations are being made available. It's just that many times it's not going to be raw cash. So we can say, okay, we are giving I think in 2014, about 3 billion was released for the construction of low houses in Abuja. So they won't give you that fund, but that fund will be used to construct houses that low-income earners can take and say, okay, maybe every month you pay 20,000 back, and when you pay that for 10 years or pay that for 5 years, before you know, you are a home owner. So we have the government making those provisions in allocation. We also have international bodies. So we have support from international bodies, just like the United Nations that I talked about. United Nations, I think they call it United Nations Housing Development Agency, is an agency in the United Nations that make fund available to African countries. They make this fund available that, okay, Nigeria, this is your budget, and then it goes to the government, and then it has a channel that it goes to some of these people who are in the slums and in the shanty, just to help in their upgrade. And maybe later we'll talk about that, because of the whole corruption and all that goes through some of those processes, that sometimes even when this money comes from outside, I think that it has actually discouraged even a lot of international investors when it comes to the upgrade of slums and shanties. Because when you keep pumping money to a place and then you expect to see change, and then you don't see change, the only thing we see is on the newspaper. There's also amount of money was released. We see, because those other people will publish it, and then we don't see the effect of some of this money that is being released into the community. May discourage people, but the government comes, we have international bodies who are giving us support in the upgrade of slums and shanties. But what is most important is that individuals who stay in a particular location, who are facing challenges in that location, should be able to understand that if I must make this place better, the first financing must come from myself. So how do we collaborate together? How do we put effort together? How do we manage our resources together to provide basic amenities? If it means there's no light in a place, let's come together and buy a transformer in that place. Because if you continue to wait for funds from whatsoever, you'll be waiting a long time, and those money may not come. But I think I've mentioned a few and all that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, for your submissions regarding upgrading of slums and shanties. We wish there was more time to look at other areas, but we're time constrained. However, we thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
It's been a wonderful show. We know what to do if we are to have affordable housing in Nigeria. If the housing deficit is to be reduced, then the government must reform some of the structures that it has put in place to ensure affordable housing. And you and I have our own parts to do. There is the aspect of collaboration. If you live in a slum or shanty, do not wait for the government. You're the one living there. So together you can help your living condition. I am Blessing Aichi. Thank you for watching today's show. Business Insight comes up at 10 a.m. here on Souq News.
To do a catch-up for this show, you can go on our YouTube platform or social media platforms at Souq News for you to like, comment, and also the conversation continues. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.